Hello and welcome to the Ohio Arts Council's Riffe-Gallery. Today we're going to have a look at the exhibition, It's an Honor to Be Here, curated by Madeline, Beaumier, and Maria Burke. So you two, tell us a little bit about this show. You submitted to the curatorial call, took some time together. You were working here as preparators, putting together exhibitions, hanging them, and doing all sorts of things. They decided to propose an exhibition, and so you had some time together. Tell us how you came up with this idea.
So my background is working in natural history museums. I was at the Cleveland Museum of Natural History for over a decade, working with taxidermists and scientific illustrators and model makers, and just traditional nature artists. So I had always had this idea of rolling around in my brain of doing an exhibit of these kind of nature artists and bringing them together with some more conceptual artists in the context of a gallery show. So I kind of ran that past Maddie.
I've got a background in curation, and I usually do like large group shows with including a lot of like amateur and more established artists and kind of bringing them together. And I've always found that I don't know, it helps everybody in the show. It gets more people out, and I think having like that administrative like organizing experience was helpful. Sorry, I kind of lost it.
That's okay. So It's an Honor to Be Here. That's a really unique title for a show. So tell us a little bit about how you came to it.
So it was actually the last piece. So we wrote out the whole proposal, and we were putting together slideshows of artists from the OAC registry and other artists that we were able to find around the state. And it was one of those things where we really kind of put our heads together on our separate philosophies about art and about nature and tried to find a through line that made sense to do a show together. And after reading it all through, that seemed to be the sentiment that was carried all the way through the idea of the show, was just that we were so excited to have this opportunity to share it with other artists, to exist in this beautiful, strange world in the first place, and we wanted to kind of run that all into one title, I guess.
And to really just celebrate Ohio and its natural resources. Like, it's an honor to be here. We've got, the Great Lakes, we've got the Great Plains, we've got the foothills to the Appalachian Mountains. So it really is an honor to be here and live amongst all of this natural beauty that we have.
Absolutely.
And to celebrate it through the fantastic artists in Ohio.
Yeah. So, thinking about this exhibition, one thing that you all should know is this is the second iteration. So there was a bit of time between when they proposed the exhibition and when this has come to fruition. And so they reached out and said, hey, Kat, is it okay if we do a show at another location before and, just have that experience? So you put together an entirely different exhibition for the Decorative Arts Center and kind of pinch hit that for them. They had a hole in their schedule that the two of you were able to fill because you had been working in their space as well. And something you should know is that for that exhibition, they received the Best Exhibition of the Year from the Ohio Museum Association. So a really high honor, so congratulations to the two of you.
Oh, thank you, we were very surprised.
It's really all the artists that were in the show.
It is. And speaking of that, what I love about that opportunity and that you were able to have such an extensive exhibition at the Decorative Arts Center and another iteration here is that so many more artists could participate. So there's this underpinning of honoring nature and naturalists and the folks that are often behind the scenes. And so we get so many of those folks involved in this, and what a treat, right? So I feel like that's a really natural kind of segue for us to actually talk about the artist. So right behind us, tell us about this artist.
So this is Laurie Musser. She's from Strongsville, Ohio. And I actually met Laurie several years ago. The two of us both participate in a nature art show that is at the Medina County Parks District hosts. And what I loved about Laurie's work is a lot of it is taken from photography that she's taken herself on walks through the woods and kind of catching these glimpses of little critters. And she's very talented in the traditional sense of illustration. And what you might not expect is that a lot of her work is actually digital, so she's doing it on a tablet. And the skill that it takes to make digital art look like traditional art is pretty incredible, and that's what really impressed me.
I know she's definitely applying techniques that you would see in a lot of traditional art through an entirely new medium, and it was a great expression of something that we were trying to do in this show, which was to bring in different forms of artwork that honor and appreciate and take from nature, as opposed to just capturing what's out there, but trying to do it in a lot of different ways and through a lot of different mediums and methods.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And Laurie herself is a full-time commercial artist, so it was nice to be able to feature somebody with that kind of background.
And are most of these critters native to Ohio?
They are. They're all native to Ohio. So the black and white piece here is of a eastern screech owl. The piece to the right is a red-bellied woodpecker, and below that is a barn owl. So actually right now it is the month of January, and all three of those birds, surprisingly, are still around. They do not migrate, and they stay right here in Ohio.
Yay! I love animal facts.
Yay!
Perfect exhibition to do that. And so surrounding Laurie's work, we have some really excellent additional works. Tell us a little bit about this artist and how these are made.
So this artwork, or these photographs, are by David FitzSimmons. And David is actually more well known within the children's book world and community. He's a children's book author. We have some samples of his books here, so you can see his series of Curious Critters. David explained it to me that he wanted to make a series of coffee table books, but for children. And that even includes his little board books for our toddlers and early readers. And his work focuses all on just wildlife. Most of the pieces that are in the show are Ohio animals, and he just does a beautiful job focusing in on them with these beautiful portraits.
So how is he taking these photos of these creatures? Like, is he partnering with organizations that are either rehabilitating or, like, tell us a little bit about that.
So he's mostly working with captive animals that are at nature centers and zoos, rehab facilities. So it's also a nice way to be able to give those animals an opportunity to be ambassadors in a way of their species, and be able to do it in a nice, safe environment for the animal.
Yeah, they're really beautiful. And I love how they're really focused in on that. It's nice having that difference between Laurie's work, where it's really about the nature and the animal, and then juxtaposed right next to it, where it is really hyper-focused on the actual animal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, some of the details you get in these shots are just incredible, just something that you wouldn't really be able to experience without harassing an animal in the wild. So it's really nice to be able to have people get so close and intimate with them, but also do that in a safe way for the critters themselves.
Absolutely.
And a fun thing about the tree frog piece that I always find kind of interesting is that you think of tree frogs as being like a tropical rainforest animal, but what a lot of folks don't know is that green tree frogs are very prevalent in the state of Ohio. And
Yeah, I found one at the Cultural Arts Center a couple months ago and asked Maria what to do with it, and she said, leave it alone.
It's a cool little critter that we have in Ohio, and it's neat to think that we have tree frogs.
I love that. Yes. It's an honor to be here with those animals. Mm-hmm. Let's pop over here to this gorgeous piece. So, Maria, you're actually a taxidermist yourself, so you you know this other taxidermist very well.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about this. Help us understand this piece.
So this piece is by the artist Leslie Sims. Leslie is from Marengo, Ohio, which is in Morrow County. And Leslie is a retired Columbus Public Schools science teacher. Leslie has always been drawing and making artwork her entire life, and when it came time for her to like have a career, teaching was really the best option for her at the time. And so she kind of had to put her art practice aside. She's always been doing taxidermy on the side, and when I met her, I just was blown away by her work. And after retiring, she's been able to focus more on her artwork now, which is really exciting for her. And she told me about this bear that she wanted to work on. A client of hers had actually collected the bear for food to feed his family, actually. And since it was a female, it's much smaller than what you would mostly find, that taxidermists would find that they would want for as a trophy. Usually folks are looking for a large male, and traditionally a lot of black bears are mounted in a pose where they're snarling or they're looking scary. And in reality, black bears really are only going to do that if you're approaching them and they're frightened. So Leslie really wanted to do a piece of a black bear in really its natural state. Relaxing, just being a bear, enjoying some blueberries. Because to her, that is really how she sees bears in her mind, that they're not these scary, snarling creatures, but you know, they like to eat blueberries too. So this piece is called Blueberry Breakfast. And she's created this small habitat here that shows blueberries and highlights a few of our native plants from Ohio. And she even went above and beyond and needle felted a little hooded warbler, which is a nice bright yellow little bird. She wanted to just create like a little bit more of a narrative to the piece, and hooded warblers are one of Ohio's warblers that will actually nest in low shrubs like our low bush blueberries.
It's a pretty special piece.
We were so excited to finally be able to include a piece of her taxidermy. We had some of her drawings in our original show, and her drawings are incredible, but the taxidermy really blew us away. And the bears are returning to Ohio for the first time in a very long time, so it felt very timely to be able to include this piece in the show as well.
Yeah. And it should be noted that the bear was collected in a location where they are prevalent. So,
It was not collected.
Not a rare Ohio bear.
Yes, which and like that was a good point, Maddie. That Northeast Ohio is starting to see more and more black bear.
Pretty amazing. Mm-hmm. All right, so let's pop on over to this piece over here. You want to start us off, Maddie?
Oh, sure. So this is Carmen Ostermann's work. We included a couple of her pieces in this show, and she works for the Ohio Audubon Center, and we had the really wonderful experience of her reaching out after our initial show because she had seen it and was interested in it, and it was this beautiful thing where like it was kind of a calling to nature artists, so we got to learn more about them and just see how many are in the state making beautiful art, and Carmen's a perfect example of that. Her work is so beautiful and delicate, and it really nods to the fragility of nature, but also its ability to continually like reinvent itself and become something new from what it was. She has some pieces that we'll look at later in the exhibit where it's bird species that are being consumed by these nodes, and it's a talk about what decomposition is and what it means to create life out of life, and just the kind of wild process that we're all always caught in the middle of that we see pieces of, but she just has a wonderful poetry for pausing it in porcelain and showing us little iterations of it.
Yeah. And I really enjoy how you all curated this exhibition to have echoing visual cues. So here we have this beautiful composition of nests directly across from a piece by Michelle Stitzlein that has, these repeat circular bits as
kind of
well. So
like
there's this
tendrils and this very organic shapes.
but also really organized.
And a beautiful thing about this piece too is it's entitled Anthropocene Extinction, which, if you're not familiar with that word, many scientists are calling the period that we're living in right now the Anthropocene, which is another stage of mass extinctions that we're seeing in our world. And so this piece is really about how bird species are going extinct and just the fragility that they really have in survival of these species in some of these hard times with climate change.
Yeah, thank you. Let's pop over here for this lovely installation. So start us off, Maddie. Who is this?
All right, this is Michelle Stitzlein, and did I say it right?
Yep, you did.
Okay, sorry. Can I just do? Are we
Nope.
Nope. Okay. Sorry. Sorry. So this is Michelle Stitzlein. We worked with her work while we were installing a show way back when we were still working together here.
Yeah, it was
And we were just like so enthralled by the environments that she creates and her use of like reusable materials. I mean, she has so many different electronics, and you think about the stages of invention and rejection and just filling landfills with old things that we decide we don't need anymore. But she has this incredible knack for finding and organizing and making a whole studio of materials that just, it makes the world feel infinite in a way that it kind of is, in the way that it creates. And if you're willing to open yourself up to new materials and experiences, you can really kind of have an endless pool there.
Yeah.
In this piece especially, so she's got a cedar moth here in the middle, and then it's protea all around, which are these amazing African flowers, which people go nuts for. They are really over-farmed. There's a lot of protection trying to happen because they do so much for their environment, but they're also something that, like, as humans, we just think are so beautiful and have this just willingness.
Unreasonable, unsatiated.
Yeah, we just collect
draw.
them like
Yes,
crazy.
yes.
Whereas the cedar moth is known as this giant pest in Australia. People just, like, doing research about it, all I could find was just ways to get rid of cedar moths.
Oh, wow.
So it was this really interesting juxtaposition about like how we separate our natural world into things that we love and we appreciate, and also things that are just annoying and get in our way. But also this is just one giant environment in which everything has a role and everything is important, even if it's not, harvesting cedar wood, which is something that we're doing a lot of.
And so something that you see in this work by Michelle is that she is deeply concerned with our environment and how we are affecting it. So she is absolutely an environmentalist that helps a viewer see themselves in a work. So you can recognize a license plate or old pans or old hoses and think about your own experience. When have you or I thrown away such items, and what then could they be used for rather than filling a landfill,
constructing a giant moth.
Who knew?
Yeah.
Beautiful, really beautiful. And what I also love about Michelle's work is that it has that complexity that just, puts you on your heels. It is all recycled material, but it all feels so natural and appropriate.
And she's very intentional about her colors and just the patterning and how she overlays them, and composition too. This piece, she's very intentional about where everything is placed.
Well, this was especially exciting too because she composed this in this space. She hadn't done that before. It was something that she's been wanting to do for a long time, to put the moth like inside of an environment, and because they're usually standalone, and then the Protea are usually a standalone exhibit too. So to combine the two and to like watch her process of articulating this was just really amazing. It was such an experience for us.
It was
And
a
we
real
hope you enjoyed it.
orchestration,
Absolutely.
to be sure. Yeah.
And we were thrilled to have her because her work takes up so much volume. We weren't able to fit her in our previous show, so we were excited that she was able to make it for this one for us.
Yeah. And the juxtaposition of this work to the immediate previous work that were, those tiny, delicate porcelain pieces to these really hardy recycled materials. It's really lovely.
Yeah, it's a fun range.
Yeah. And so let's pop on over here. So who is this artist? Tell us about her.
So this is Lailah Hill. I found her work through the Springfield Museum of Art. I was hanging their juried show down there. And this was the piece that was included in the juried show originally, so it's the first thing I saw of hers, and I was just enthralled. I love the way that it married with Michelle's work and the use of recycled materials, and then I learned more about her background and where she drew from, and her work is just all about memory, and especially memory in nature and time that she spent with her family, and it just does this, it contributes this wonderful thing to the show where, first of all, we have human forms, and we're reminded that we are human animals and that we are part of our environment, and it's not just something that we observe or poke at. But also that we exist within this history, or that all of our history exists within this environment as well, and all of our memory is situated in this world, and it just has such a wonderful idea of belonging and ease to exist within, or exist here.
Yeah, and when Maddie shared this piece with me, I was just blown away because it felt like a piece that was kind of missing from some of our previous show, was showing people in nature, enjoying it, and seeing this piece for the first time, just the expression on the man's face where he just looks like he's taking a deep breath and breathing in that air and just kind of absorbing the nature around him. I just thought it was really beautiful.
It is. Right. So let's come around this corner, and we have all sorts of goodies here on the title wall.
Duck City.
Yeah.
Ducks.
Maria, tell us about these works.
Yeah. So these pieces are what the decoy artists would call working duck decoys. And I was just very fascinated with the fact that there's this artistry of creating these pieces that are really meant to be utilitarian. They're used as hunting aids. And there's just a great level of detail and precision and craftsmanship that goes into making these. Even though they might be taking these out into the field and getting muddy and dirty.
Actively shooting at them.
Yeah, they're still these beautiful works of art. And we're lucky enough that in Ohio we have two artists, a father and son, Marc and Luke Costilow. And they are national championship duck decoy carvers. And they focus on these working decoys that get used out in the field, but they are well known for their painting techniques, their extreme detail to carving the shapes and forms of the specific species, and thinking about an art exhibit. In my mind, I don't see why something like this wouldn't be featured in a gallery setting.
Oh no, the artistry is incredible, and it's so exciting to be able to put them on a pedestal.
Yeah. So quite a few to enjoy within this exhibition, and incredible detail, as you say. And I see why those waterfowl would be confused and think that, this is a buddy that they might want to hang out with.
No, they look exactly like a duck. And A fun thing, duck decoys, you have your decorative decoys that are made to be very detailed and sit on a mantle and be appreciated. But these actually have to float in water. So there's a little bit of a science behind it, getting these pieces to float in the water at a level that a duck would naturally float. So like the loon is a diving duck that is going to sit lower in the water, as opposed to like our mallards and black ducks that sit a bit higher. So you can actually see that in the pieces themselves, imagining kind of where that water line is going to hit them. And that was all very intentional by the artists.
Fantastic. So if you're curious about why something is a little lower than another, there's a reason why.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's come on over to Deb's work. Tell us a little bit about Deb. How'd you find her? What drew you to this piece? Tell us all about it.
So Deb Berkebile is from Ashtabula, Ohio. I found her when we were originally looking for artists for the proposal, and she was part of this Lake Erie quilting group, and the images just blew me away. It was an incredible amount of detail. The composition was really interesting color-wise and stuff too, and the more I learned about her work, they're drawn from the GIS system, which is the Geographical Information System that scientists all over the world use to monitor changes in coastlines, and there's all these interesting color components to it and how they're labeling different scientific information, and to see that translated into something as soft as fabric with these incredible detail stitches. I mean, if you want to come and take a look, she actually has like little fishes stitched into the legs here. Like, she took every opportunity to just show care and appreciation for the areas that she's documenting, and it shows the artistry of our world and our geography.
And I personally was just blown away by the fact that she's able to incorporate all these little fish in the stitching, which you don't notice when you're first looking at it. But they're all different. She's got a sturgeon, what looks like a trout, and even up here, I can find it again.
There was a catfish in there too.
Yeah, there's a catfish. So she's, going above and beyond, stitching in even a diversity of fish species, which is just incredible, and something you would never know about this piece unless you saw it in person. It was kind of a nice little surprise for us.
Oh yeah, we were so lucky. We got it on loan from Lakeland University, and we're just so excited to be able to show it. It was one of the first pieces we saw, and it wasn't available the last time we did that show, and we also just space, it's giant. We had some spatial issues, but we were so happy to be able to bring it into a space that could really hold it, like the Rife.
And this piece just really was like a very nice summation of what the exhibit is about, and kind of appreciating where we are.
Absolutely.
Very unique spot in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So let's come right on over to this wonderful installation. Tell us about this artist and this work.
This is Char Norman, and this was another one of those situations where we had done the first show, and then everybody who knows a great naturalist artist immediately approached us and was like, hey, have you ever heard of this person? Do you know this person's work? And I'd actually seen Char's work at the Springfield Museum of Art years ago. She was already installed in one of the front galleries, and I was doing a show in the back. And I was talking to their educational coordinator there about the decorative art show, and she's like, you have to talk to Char Norman. She is brilliant. She's so lovely to work with, and her work will fit your theme perfectly. And everything she said was absolutely correct. We were so grateful to be able to work with Char and to bring her work into the show. It adds an experiential element. It really just suits the space so well, and I think really helped us divide it in. I don't know, her work is sprinkled all over the show, and it just fits everywhere.
Mm-hmm. So what is this piece about?
So these are the weaver bird nests. So she was in South America, and she had the experience of seeing nests that look actually pretty much exactly like this hanging in the trees down there. And she said it was just kind of weird out-of-body thing, because it feels human-made. They're just incredible architects of animals, and they do their own installation work, so she was really following their lead. And of curiosity, as a fiber artist, she was so interested in the construction and just had to take a hand at making them herself, and did really incredible work. It was quite an experience to see him in person.
Her use of natural materials with the yarn and the burlap and her weaving techniques, it was just really beautiful and delicate, and
A great instance of how we can learn from other species and what they make.
Yeah, take some direction from nature, and this is really beautiful because those birds in particular are colonial species, so they all nest in these huge groups and just kind of weigh down these trees with their nests. And she just did like such an awesome job kind of recreating that and giving it that weight that you would see in nature.
That's wonderful. Well, let's pop on over to our glass artists.
Yeah. Do you want to start with Marc?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So one of the art forms we really wanted to see if we could touch upon is glass artists, because they are, the discipline and the process that goes into that is just incredible. And I met Marc Petrovic when he was a professor at the Cleveland Institute of Art. And I was working at the Natural History Museum, and we did a project with his students where they were making glass pieces based off of wildlife that they'd seen in the museum. So I've kind of kept up with Marc and following his artwork, and he is able to forge with glass these incredible lifelike interpretations of birds and fish with incredible detail. And we reached out to him for this show, and he was generous enough to share these bottle pieces that talk about extinction and survival and resilience and rebirth, and they're just absolutely beautiful and stunning. And we were lucky enough, Marc's wife, Kari Petrovic, is also a glass artist. So we feature some pieces here that are also by Kari. Her work is also very anchored in nature as well. So Kari creates these extremely detailed, almost filigree pieces of glass that she forges tiny little pieces together with a flame. And these pieces specifically, the blackberries and then the bluebird, were just absolutely stunning. And the aspect of just how fragile they are kind of was a nice nod to just the fragility of our environment and nature.
Yeah. They even have a work over here close to our next artist that is a collaborative piece. So, and I love that it has the state bird represented.
Oh, we couldn't have a show without cardinal.
You had to have a cardinal.
Yeah, no, it's exciting to have a couple of families involved in this between the Costilows and the Petrovics.
Yeah, I didn't even think about the fact that we've got some like family duos here.
Yeah, what a treat.
Even the Costilows have a duck piece that both Marc and Luke both worked on together. So it's kind of fun to see these teams.
Look at that. How about Tom?
Yeah, Tom. So working in the kind of natural areas and museum settings, you run into a lot of folks that in their personal life or their careers, they're naturalists, environmental scientists, biologists, and they just happen to do artwork on the side, and it's more of like a hobby or a second job for them. And Tom is one of those people. Tom is an environmental educator. He works at the Cleveland Botanical Gardens and Holden Arboretum up in the Cleveland area. And I've known Tom for a good while, working, you know, in similar areas and crossing paths a lot. And I always knew that he did art. Specifically, he likes to do very detailed scientific illustrations. And when I found out about the series he was working on, it focuses on his personal heritage and the family that he has in the Philippines. So these are all photographs that he took of himself, but then replaced the faces with birds that are native to the Philippines. And it's a fun kind of play on, you know, his identity and also celebrating that part of the world and the wildlife there, and really kind of his family and heritage too.
Yeah. And so we'll come around this corner here. And these are a couple more pieces by Lailah, but here on the other wall we have Laurie. So here in this exhibition, I think it's important to note that Maddie and Maria organized it in such a way that some of the artists have work in a variety of places because of the way they speak to each other, the contents, visual cues, maybe conceptual bits. So if you look over at this wall, you'll see David and Carmen placed together, and it really makes sense because of kind of the visual textures that you have, but also the content. So, you know, these aquatic pieces and Carmen's work that speaks to bleached coral, as well as those items. Do you all want to chat a little bit about that kind of organization before we chat on additional artists?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we were thinking about it as an ecosystem where the differences between the work really help to accentuate what's special about each piece and the difference in approach and medium that the artists are taking. We just wanted everything to complement each other and to ask questions of each other, and to not just walk from one separate environment to another, but to understand that these are all both artists, scientists, and pieces of art that are working together to create something unique, a unique experience to walk through.
Yeah, and they really work together as a community, like you would see in nature. And that diversity working together is what creates resilience and
Really anything functional.
yeah.
Yeah.
So we really wanted to reflect that, that these artists aren't just, you know, working on their own, that there's all these other variables as well, and they all work so well together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's go and chat about Samuel James.
Yeah. So Sam is from Adams County, and he lives right near the edge of Appalachia Preserve, and he does a lot of work with field biologists and doing surveys and studies. And I met Sam through some friends of mine that were doing research on the Allegheny wood rat. The Allegheny wood rat is what's photographed in this piece here, is the most endangered mammal in the state of Ohio. It lives in very small cliff crevices. It's a very specialized species, so it's been having a hard time getting their numbers to rebound. So I was with a group that was doing surveys of them, and I met Sam. And you know, our conversations at the time were just about wood rats, because what else would you talk about? And then he later mentioned that he did some photography. And I later looked up his website and looked at his work, and I was just absolutely blown away with the work that he does. He's just creates these little intimate worlds. And I love his vernal pool series that he focuses on the little micro and macro organisms that live in our vernal pools, which are, these little shallow bodies of water that are really only around during the springtime when we're having heavy rain. And what you don't realize is there's just a huge complexity of creatures that inhabit these tiny pools. And he does a beautiful job of highlighting just the beauty of them, the iridescentness of the fairy shrimp and the delicate skin on the wood frog, tadpoles, and the carnivorous diving beetles. It's like this whole other unearthly realm that he gives you a glimpse into.
They're really beautifully composed as well. And so seeing them kind of in this grouping has each of them have an individual strength to them, but gathered together, it also keeps you there in this kind of universe, this ethereal. They're all, they feel like they were taken at night. They may not have been, but they feel like it.
Yeah.
It's a nice treat. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It feels like one of those things where if you squint, you're just going to be able to keep seeing further into it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You'd almost, from far away, think that it was photographs of like galaxies or something more abstract, but
yeah,
it's kind of a fun surprise.
Yeah.
It is. Speaking of surprises, why don't we come around this corner?
Yeah.
So tell us about this piece. Why is this so special and important?
So another artist that we really wanted to shine a light on is Dave Might. And Dave Might's from the Cincinnati area. He's a sculptor and a taxidermist who works at the Cincinnati Museum Center. And Dave's sculptures and taxidermy are all over that museum. But as far as I know, his name is not attached to any of the work that he's done. Children and school groups see these things. Thousands of people have viewed his work. But he's never gotten recognition for the incredible artist that he is. And he had been telling me about this lion skin that he had acquired from the Hefner Museum at Miami University. And it was a lion that was a local woman's pet that had passed away, unfortunately. And the museum had the skin. And Dave had been playing with the idea for years about creating a piece that recreates a facsimile of the species Smilodon fatalis, which is believed to have actually lived here in Ohio during the Ice Age. So we approached Dave and told him we're doing this show, and do you think you could revisit that project and make it happen? And he was thrilled at the challenge, and so he sculpted this entire piece and created like this amazing facsimile. Part of the process is he acquired 3D scans of Smilodon fatalis skull. So he had the skull actually 3D printed. So you can see parts of that in the teeth and in the mouth. So these are perfect representations of that cat's dental structure. Another thing he did was he acquired a commercial taxidermy lion form to create the basic structure of the piece, but he heavily manipulated it, carved it, sculpted it, added more muscle and bulk to it because scientific evidence shows that they would have been a more beefy, more ambush predator, and he really wanted it to reflect that. Another thing that he did too was he very painstakingly painted all of these little spotted rosettes on the hide, which again is something that scientists believe that these animals would have been ambush predators, so most likely they would be very camouflaged. And the dappling spots kind of helps keep it camouflaged from prey. And a fun little tidbit is the little bobtail. Since lions don't have little bobtails like that, He actually used parts of fox, black bear, and coyote to create that little bobtail.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It is amazing. It's also amazing to think about the extraordinary artistry that you have to have in your tool belt to complete a piece like this. Painting, sculpting, airbrush, sewing.
Sewing, he stitched all of that.
Yeah, it's pretty phenomenal. And so I think it's appropriate for us to end in this corner. Let's chat about this artist and we'll close it out.
All right. Our last artist for the show is Nick Stull. He and I have worked together probably over the course of like 15 years at this point. He's an incredible artist. He's got a very long painting history, and the way that he's evolved his discipline is really, it's been exciting to watch over so much time. But his last couple series have really focused on the idea of both water and migration. And that was a theme that really existed throughout the show. There are so many water creatures, there are representations of water, and it's something that's been consistent in both iterations of the show as well. Mm-hmm. So Nick's work was something that I was thinking about from the beginning, because he hides details from all of these other species that are migrating, not necessarily with us, but just the idea that the entire world is constantly reorganizing itself, and it really harkens back to some really interesting ecological principles about how we really kind of frame the idea of competition over space and food and resources, but in a true state of the natural world, everything's moving around all of the time, and that's usually not the constricting factor. So as long as we're open to change and evolving ourselves and evolving our societies, like we can find what we need, and we can find a future that will maybe be a little bit more creative than we endeavored to in the beginning, but can be something that works well for everybody and helps us, I don't know, show the world a respect it deserves in each other.
So a beautiful kind of tie together of the importance of the environment, nature, and artists who delve deeply into these concepts to not only represent them, but to really honor them, right? So thank you both for your talent and time in putting together this exhibition of phenomenal artists.
Oh, thank you so much, Kat, for all the opportunity and all of your help doing that as well.
Of course.
And
of
thank
course.
you to the artists.
A big thank you to the artists.
And support of the OAC.
So this has been a curatorial tour of It's an Honor to Be Here, curated by Maddie and Maria. Big thank you to the Ohio Arts Council's board, the Ohio legislature, and the governor's office, who all support the Ohio Arts Council, this great space, and of course, Ohio artists.